Well, Brooke, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
And thanks for having me.
Yay! We're going to start with the lightning round. And I keep saying this, but it's really not very fast at all. So I should just start calling it the turtle round. It's because we go slow. But it's kind of a fun jumping off point because it just is a good place for discussion.
Of
Do you have a
course.
favorite recovery book?
I think that the one that helped me the most is I think Ruby Warrington's Sober Curious.
Were you still drinking when you read that?
I wasn't. It opened my eyes up to the idea that you could get sober without being paralyzed in your addiction and hitting a rock bottom. Like, to me,
Right.
it was like the most profound part of my journey, just knowing that there are people out there that don't have to hit a low point like I did. And I think for whatever your reasons, I feel like that sort of has sparked this movement of sober curiosity and people that are getting sober for themselves and because they don't like the way alcohol makes them feel, instead of the dependence that I had on it.
Right. So you did actually have that rock bottom experience.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, that'll be fun to talk about. No, but what's interesting about the term sober curious is that I think it's a sort of soft opening into this world of recovery without having to use outdated terms like alcoholic.
Right.
Yeah,
Now,
which is
see,
not
I know that it's an outdated term, and it's not a popular opinion, but for me personally, if I don't say that I'm an alcoholic regularly, I forget that I'm an alcoholic regularly. So
I
my
love
brain is like, you don't have a problem. What? You're
that.
good. You haven't drank in X amount of years. So I know it's outdated and it's not the modern way of things, but it saying it out loud for me has solidified my sobriety by being able to accept and say, like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, and there's millions of others around the world that look like me and
Mhm.
aren't living under a bridge. But I do think that I understand. I didn't want to admit that myself at the beginning, right? So I do understand it. For me personally, alcoholic is a term that will never be outdated in my recovery.
I love that you said that. I think I get a little scared. Like, I don't want to turn people away from recovery. And some people are like scared. But thank you for saying that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's an unpopular opinion. I think there are a lot of people who are very vocal about not liking certain words, character defects, alcoholic, all that stuff. And so there's this big backlash against using words like that. And I'm such a people pleaser. I'm like, okay, we can call it alcohol use disorder. But when I, damn it, I'm so codependent.
Well, I
When
mean,
is that
and I
going to
think
end?
that I find myself in certain groups. I guess I censor myself a little. The
Mm,
people pleaser in me will start censoring, but at the core of it all, I know people don't want to be labeled,
yeah.
but
I
I
like
do
that
think
you embrace the label
yeah, well, I think it's a
alcoholic.
disease. It is a
Yeah.
disease. If my
Yeah.
brain were next to someone else's brain, a normie who doesn't have an alcohol problem, my brain looks different than their
Yeah.
brain. It
It
lights up
does.
differently. It's a disease.
Yeah.
So if I had cancer, I wouldn't say I have a mass that I'm dealing with. I mean, I would say I have cancer.
That is hilarious. That is also very true. What you just did. I like that. Okay, so Ruby Warrington. I just actually, I just downloaded her book not that long ago. I saw her on my friend's podcast, and I was like, my friend Casey Davidson hosts the Hello Someday podcast. Super fabulous. So I got a really, really good interview. Um, Thanks for sharing that. Do you have a go-to mantra or quote that you live by?
Live for today because nobody's promised tomorrow.
Oh gosh, isn't that the truth? Listen, you just told me a little story about your family. I know you lost your sister. I just lost my mom. Man, does that quote hit home for me?
Yeah, it's
That's a good one.
yeah. That was hers. That's what she said. So
Your
that's,
sister used to say that?
yeah, that's where I've used it my whole life.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful. Sort of like a carpe diem, seize the day.
Yeah.
Don't sweat the small
Yeah.
stuff. It encapsulates a lot of good things. I like that.
Yeah, it does.
Do you have a regular self-care practice, or do you think of it more like a weekly routine?
I think I do. I have a self-care practice that's regular. I meditate regularly. Lately it's been a lot of Joe Dispenza stuff, energy, work, and moving, because I'm like obsessed.
Me too. Girl, we should set up we should go to one of those retreats together.
I literally just bought the courses because I'm like, these are prerequisites to have to go to any of his things. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
but if you
buying
do,
it.
yeah. Okay, so we'll after this we'll plan our week long. I have a friend who has been to like four of them.
I
Has gone.
heard they're it like, I mean, obviously they're life changing.
Oh yeah.
So I am definitely, we will chat at the end of this about that, because I went to Miraval spa
Oh.
and wellness resort, like
Ooh.
bougie, in the beginning of November, which has been a
Ooh.
kind of a real shift for me. And
What did you do there?
I did a lot there. I got some Ayurvedic treatments that I wouldn't normally have in Michigan here, that were interesting, cleansing the third eye chakra with this. It's like they cleanse your whole body with and get your lymphatic system at the same time. So it's a massage, but it's not like a massage you've ever had here. It's very different. And then they say mantras and they massage your belly even, which was, for any woman, is a weird experience. Like, I was like,
Oh
you're going to
dear
massage
God.
my stomach. Like, I don't
You're
even
gonna
let my
do what?
husband touch my stomach.
Same, same. Nobody's touching this. Not even me.
But I gotta say, it felt fabulous. And my whole
Wow.
like center like felt so free, like light. I don't know. And then they put this hot oil over your third eye and they let it drip, and then the oil gets all in your hair, and they do this incredible acupressure massage on your head.
It's like cranial sacra stuff.
Oh God, yeah. It was like, so that was my favorite thing experience that I had at
Ah.
Miraval. And then I did equine, a couple equine experiences, which
Ooh.
were uh
Horse
I
therapy,
think
right?
life changing for me. And I'm like, so much so that I have talked to them about who does the same type of equine therapy that they do here, because I want to continue to do the equine therapy. But anyways, I'll backpedal. I do have a self-care
Awesome.
routine. Joe Dispenza, I meditate, and the intuitive at Miraval was telling me too that something with energy. I had three kind of spiritual advisors there that I saw, and every one of them said, I really see something with energy work with you. You really need to start tapping in, like Abraham Hicks or Joe
Ooh.
Dispenza. And
Mm.
I'm real familiar with Abraham, but I really have only kind of dipped my toe in the Dispenza pool. So now I'm like all in after like 3 weeks. I mean, I bought like walking meditations, and I've got
Yeah.
other meditations, and um I mean, it's just the whole concept, and what he does in a meditation makes me feel so grounded that I can't wait to experience even more of that.
Yeah.
So meditation practice for me is huge, because I think, like many people in recovery, my mind doesn't stop. It never, I drank to stop my mind from
Right. Yeah.
running the way that it ran. And for me, it's extremely important that I ground myself every single day. Even if it's only for 10 minutes, if it's a crazy busy day and I only have 5 minutes, I've got to do something to silence my brain, to get my day going.
Daily grounding. I love that. Yeah. The Joe Dispenza, his some of the ideas that he teaches, I incorporate that into part of my coaching practice and in some of my classes, because it's just so practical and it's science based. So it's not hyperbole. It's
Yeah.
so
You,
interesting.
it's how you clinch the non woo woo belief, like, well,
Yeah.
this is the scientifically proven fact.
Yeah. Science. Or like the Breaking Bad guy, science, bitch. Love him.
Such a great
Um,
show.
I know, oh my God. Okay, so I love that. Like, and what's interesting is Joe Dispenza has so many interviews on different podcasts. Like Aubrey Marcus did a couple of interviews with him. Lewis Howes has a couple of interviews with him that are really good. But I just
Lewis, I
love,
mean, yeah, he's another one that I look up to and listen to a lot of his stuff, his YouTubes, because they're just
mhm,
inspirational. I like to pump myself full of my future self and
yeah,
positive thoughts because
yeah,
I, left to my own devices, I will sit and tell myself how awful I am all day,
yeah.
every day. You know, I'm
I
not
know it
immune to
is.
it. Like my thoughts, I'll be in my head, like, what's wrong with you? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get it. The whole negativity bias, confirmation bias, that's all deeply rooted in our neuropsychology. And yeah, so it is, and it's interesting. It's like an ongoing process. Like you wouldn't go to the gym once and expect to stay in shape forever, right? So it's like
right.
it's the daily conditioning that's required. A little daily brainwashing, as I like to think of it. Very good. What's one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
Ooh, um, honestly, that it gets that it does get better. I didn't believe that. I knew my life was going to get better because I was not going to be in the shit. So sorry,
Oh,
chaos. I
please
don't
feel
want to
free to
swear.
swear. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I didn't. I knew I was no longer going to be like in the total chaos of everything, but I truly thought like things are going to be so boring. Like alcohol
Oh, I
defined who
know.
I was. And
Yeah.
like, and I was doing the work was hard. And the first 2 years were hard for me. The first year more just about not drinking, and the second year, all the emotional stuff. So I think
Yeah.
just knowing that it does get better and you get to come home to yourself. And that's a beautiful thing that I think a lot of people forget,
Oh,
that they don't even know themselves anymore when you are struggling so bad with numbing and anesthetizing yourself.
I love that you said that. Come home to yourself. Yeah, I remember when I got sober after a short amount of time, my mom was like, "Oh, we have her back." Like I
Yeah.
should come
I
home. Like,
mean,
how long have you been sober?
um, 9 years and 11 months and a couple days.
So 10 years.
Yeah, and I think I was talking when we first
Yeah.
talked, but I get real the
Squirrely.
holidays for me, quite frankly, are they're difficult because my last year of drinking was such a holiday cluster. Like I just get like sick to my stomach sometimes thinking about where I was 9 years ago. It just
Yeah.
is. Um, I'm so glad to not be in that space anymore. I'm grateful that I'm no
Yeah.
longer there, and I don't want to turn my back on it because it's helped me become who I am. But I think anniversaries, I just get like, I guess squirrely is the word.
Mhm.
I just get like more anxious and I'm antsy and let's go,
Yeah.
let's go, let's go. And like,
Let's
just get
get
it done and get the
busy.
day done.
Stay busy. Don't feel anything. So when is your actual
Exactly.
anniversary?
It's
Oh, is
January
it January
22nd.
22nd? Oh, okay. January 22nd, 2012. That is
Mhm.
a great date. That's right. I actually have it written down. I just don't read my own notes. Isn't that
Oh,
fun? Yes. Okay. Lots of areas of improvement, apparently.
that's how
Um,
I am. So
yeah. Well, I love that. So it gets better, and that you can't come home to self. That's a beautiful, beautiful idea. What do you do for fun these days?
what don't I do for fun? No, I do.
You are fun.
I like, I don't know. I do what everyone else does. I go dancing sometimes with friends. I golf. I play tennis. I do bar code workouts. And most people might think that's not fun, but to me it is.
Are, yeah.
Yeah, I like love the whole concept of like female empowerment. So the whole vibe of the gym like gets me
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
But I do, I go to concerts. I love music. So music is sort of how I've always been able to articulate my feelings, is through
Hmm.
songs, and I can find songs that I relate to and gravitate to, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's how I'm feeling exactly, and then I play them for people when I can't
Yeah.
articulate it. In particular, like my husband, romantic relationships, because that's taken me a lot of work to get over a lot of the trauma that I've gone through in romantic relationships and intimate
Right.
ones. So I love concerts. I love musicians. I love,
Yeah.
any type of, it doesn't matter to me what kind of concert it is. I'm there. So
There's that quote that music speaks when words fail or something like that. I forget
yeah.
who says it, but I absolutely love that. When I first
And
got so
traveling, obviously.
oh,
Yeah.
traveling. Yeah, travel is fun. Will be again one day.
Mhm.
When I first got sober, do you remember that band Enigma?
Yeah.
There's a song called A Return to Innocence. And it sort of speaks to the paradox of early recovery. It's like, don't be afraid to be weak. Don't be too proud to be strong. Because, too proud to be strong sort of speaks to, like we got to get vulnerable and share what's really going on. And that is strength. People think there's like this sort of idea out in mainstream that there's some sort of merit in doing it by yourself, or I got sober on my own. There's no merit in that because it actually requires a lot of courage to be vulnerable and tell the truth, share the ugly truth, and be honest.
Yeah. I think it's extremely courageous and to go
Yeah,
through and say that you need help.
yeah,
It's hard
it's
because we are
hard.
conditioned since birth to like, you can do it. Stiffen up your upper lip. You got it. Like you don't
Yeah,
need, and
brush
then
it off.
addiction, the layer of like hiding and people sweeping things under the rug so that it's not found out. That conditioning just adds another layer. So I'm glad that I am glad that I was able to recognize very early on that there was no way I was doing this without help of some type of community. There was
Yeah,
just no way.
yeah. Plus, that's the fun part too. I don't think people realize how much fun we have. So
Yeah, no, I
there's
mean, it
that.
is fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. Tell me, how old were you when you had your first, was it a drink? Did you get high? What was your first using
Yeah, it was a
experience?
drink. It was freshman in high school. I was 14.
Okay, yeah, that's young. First, where were you?
We went to like this field party. I live in Michigan, so there were lots of
Uh,
fields. So.
Field party. That sounds like so much fun. You just go out in the middle of nowhere and everybody circles up their cars and drinks. Is that how it
And
goes?
has a bonfire. Like it's like Dazed and Confused, sort of, just not on that scale of that many people. But like, you just have bonfires and every kid gets like
Wasted. And then
intoxicated.
and
It's
then
a
they get
great
into their car
time.
and drive home. Amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
it was the
so
90s. That's what we did. So.
why do you think you took that first drink? Were you just wanting to be a part of, or
Yeah, I think my friends, we planned it. I mean, I think it was on a it was Friday or Saturday night, and we had given like a junior money, to buy us beers or whatever. And it was like a planned event. I hung out with my best friend my freshman year. Her sister was a junior. So like we hung out already with
all the
older
older
kids that were
kids?
already drinking and smoking weed and cigarettes and things like that. So it was only a matter of time before we decided we were jumping into what they were doing because it was so cool to
Right.
do.
Did your parents drink at all?
Not really, no. My parents to this day aren't big drinkers at all.
Isn't that funny? Okay, so you have and how was that first experience for you? Was it like oh my God, this is amazing, or
Oh yeah, like this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. I felt for the first time because by the time I drank, my sister had already died because she died when I was in 8th grade. So there was just a lot of like heaviness at my house. And
hmm,
it was very much like a sad place to be.
yeah.
And I think when I first drank, it was the first time since my sister was diagnosed with a rare juvenile bone cancer when I was 10.
Oh
So I
my
had had
God.
like 3.5 years of her being sick too, on top of, then dying.
Oh,
So
right.
it was the first time I had felt free since she was diagnosed. Like I just felt relaxed and I was funny and, like I thought I was so much cooler because people were laughing with me and all the stuff. Prettier, I mean, you name it. That was it. I was definitely becoming a drinker every chance I got after the first time.
So your sister got sick when you were like 9 and a half. You were really
Yeah, I
little.
was 10. Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been such a scary experience for you. You know what I've heard from other people who've had, I actually interviewed a guy whose little brother had, actually a couple people now that I think about it, who had siblings that died from illness like that. And there's like things that, compounding the sickness is like survivor guilt or not knowing how to process the death, like without professional help. Like people didn't get professional help a lot. It wasn't like the standard thing to do. Did you get professional help or was it like,
My parents put me in therapy. We did family therapy and like
wow,
my sister's cancer unit had social workers that dealt with siblings. In fact, I was lucky enough to go to there's this camp called Special Days, and cancer kids can go and feel normal for 2 weeks, and they have
mm,
nurses and doctors, but they get to do all the things. And then they started doing a siblings week, so siblings only went and got away and got to have an
a
experience
break.
where the illness wasn't touching you and wasn't around you, and you could feel and you were with kids going through exactly what you're going through, which was my first experience with, if you have like my people going through the same thing you are, you just feel complete because you don't feel so alone in what you're going
Right.
through.
Man, I hear that
So
that's like alone is like one of the core wounds, along with like
yeah,
not lovable or, not worthy. Like alone is such a painful experience.
it is. It's I'd rather be alone with myself and content than be in there's nothing worse than being in a room full of people and feeling alone and lonely. Like that to me is like gets paralyzing, when I feel that, like I am out of wherever I am as quickly as I can get out, because they're usually not my people if that's the way I feel.
Right? They're not my people. Man, it's so important for us to have a place where we belong. Did you have that feeling when you were growing up of like, not fitting in or not a part of? That's a pretty common experience I hear.
Well, I didn't until my sister got sick. So I was always I was the baby, and like everyone, I was kind of like, everywhere we went, I got a lot of attention. But when my sister got sick, she was like a very good tennis player, nationally ranked,
Oh,
and
wow.
um like she got her arm amputated and played tennis later
Oh,
with my
no.
grandpa had made this thing so she could one arm serve the ball, and
Wow.
she was like a fighter, and so her all of a sudden she became this person that I could never live up to, and then I didn't want to be better than her after she died because I didn't want to diminish
Oh,
the life that she had led. So I felt a part of things, and then I guess on the peripheral, it looked like I felt a part of things, but I really didn't, especially after she died, because like nobody understood what I was going through at all.
talk about isolating. That's terrible. Okay, so you start drinking at 14 and when does it escalate? I'm sure that you don't become a daily drinker at 14. Walk me through the
No.
progression.
I actually drank, I wouldn't say normally ever, but I I did drink like my friends when I got to college. We drank Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like binge drank the weekend through. And then Sundays were like hungover Taco Bell, pizza day, like grease it up and then
Yeah.
go back to class Monday and like start again.
Yeah.
I would say that my progression started in my mid 20s. Um, I was in an abusive relationship and we got married and had a daughter. And we partied together before, obviously,
Yeah.
like attracts like.
Yeah.
So, um, and then when I had my daughter, my priorities sort of shifted and his did not. And so for a
Mm,
while, I was able to deflect because he was the one with the problem and he was the one who needed
mm,
help. And I sort of held it together through a series of traumatic experiences with him. And when I finally had the courage to leave, and then I was left kind of with the dust of everything that the last like 8 or 9 years had handed to me, I really ramped up drinking to a daily situation. It had been going like 4 or 5 times a week, 6 days a week, a drink
mhm.
here and there. But then it was like drinking straight shots. And I mean, I literally couldn't process the trauma that I was needing to process.
Now, I don't want you to share anything that you don't want to share, but I have found that, and I know that you know that this is true, that when we share, because there are women listening right now who are either in the middle of an abusive relationship or have left, but have all this unresolved trauma. And you can share in a general way if you want, but can you just sort of, as much as you're comfortable with, share maybe like the nature of the abuse or the traumatic experiences that then you drank over later?
Yeah, sure. It was physical and I'd say, looking back, narcissistic abuse, a lot of emotional abuse, which I think in the after effects, the physical stuff like breaking my nose, and there were a
Ooh.
couple other really bad incidences, like that all healed. Um, but the verbal abuse didn't, because the stuff that was said to me on a daily basis, weekly basis, like just lingered, and I couldn't get past the belief that I was those things, that I was fat, that I was unlovable, that, that the wrong kid died and everybody knows
Oh,
it. And I really had to work at going beyond those thoughts. So while physical, each form of abuse has its own, you know, aspect to it, I guess, where you need to heal. But I have found um that the verbal and emotional abuse that I endured, where it was like I was the son, and then I was, like this back constant manipulation, that I'm still, honestly, over a decade later, like still unlocking and healing from a lot of that stuff. And I'm like, I have a husband now who I'm grateful, like, is patient, like with me going through things. Cause I do, I think for any woman that's stuck in an abusive relationship, you really feel like you can't leave or you can't get out, because not so much some people, the financial hardships, that kind of a
yeah.
problem, but the emotional, like, I'm not worth anything to leave. Who's going to want me? Who's going to want me if I leave this relationship? At least I've got somebody,
Oh, yeah.
so I feel like I've helped at a lot of local abuse centers, and I feel like that seems to be a real thing that a lot of women do feel is, why leave? Because I'm useless. Like, I'm
Right.
worthless, you
Yeah. What would
know?
you say to somebody listening right now who's feeling like that?
Well, that they're absolutely not worthless, and that they have it within themselves to heal and find joy again if they have the courage to just reach out and tell somebody and take one step at a time. Don't look at the big picture. Just leave. It gets better.
Oh, that's so important. One step at a time. Tell somebody. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that that's so painful, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the things about recovery is that we get to use our experience. Like we are uniquely qualified to help certain people. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that part. Um, okay, so and you were in that marriage for 8 or 9 years. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, we were married, I think 7, and then together for 9. We got together when I was 20, and our divorce was final, like, right at 30. So,
Wow, or very formative years.
yeah.
Um, okay, so it sounds like did you have like a moment of clarity? Did you have what was the thing that tipped you over to like, I have to stop drinking?
I had a moment of clarity. I think it was before the summer, where I was getting sick. Like, I would get up and, like, be throwing up, and, like, couldn't, I was starting to get withdrawals, like shaky.
Oh,
And I just knew that I didn't want to feel that way anymore. Um, and the one moment of clarity I had was, I had gotten drunk, and I would put macaroni and cheese on for my daughter. Like, I had put the noodles in boiling water, and I ended up passing out, and I woke up and the noodles were like black in the pan, and she was like asleep next to me. And oh God, I haven't thought about that in a long time. And that for me was a defining moment of the thing that killed me was she had turned the stove off. Like, they were burning, but it was off. The fire had been turned off. So I just thought, here's this 5-year-old now. What did she eat? Like, there were wrappers of like little Nutri-Grain bars and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like, she's taking care of that. And I shouldn't put that on her because I'm not capable of handling life.
Wow, that must have been so
So
scary.
I was lucky enough at that point that I did have a best friend that I grew up with that had started going to meetings. And he was, I think, like 60 days sober. So totally on this pink cloud, and everything was so great. And I had started wanting to feel that way because all he was doing was telling me how great it was, how awesome he was feeling, how wonderful everything was. And it was like, God, well, like, if TJ has this going for him, like, I mean, I need to try this, you know? And so I had asked him after that morning, I said, I think I need help. Was only interested in women's meetings. And there happened to
Smart.
be one that night. And so I went to my very first, AA meeting, and, that was mind blowing to me because I felt, um, like I fit in somewhere for the first time in a long time, because I had been hiding and lying and covering my tracks and living this secret for so long that, to say out loud, I had said to myself multiple times, like, fuck, I'm an alcoholic. Like, this is like getting bad. And I had never said it in front of other people. And so to say that was one of the most profound experiences, because it was
Mm.
like that secret, that hiding, that shame, like, it instantly, I mean, I was sobbing. I could not say it without, it was like a very, like, took me a long time to say it, but I really felt so good. And then I stuck with it for, I don't know, I think I got like probably 100 days. And then I went back out. I met up with a friend and was like, yeah, okay, I haven't drank and things have been going really good. And so I'll have
Maybe I
a glass of,
overreacted.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Maybe it wasn't that bad.
Right.
Um, and so I had a glass of wine, and I vividly can remember like driving home from her house, like, fuck these people. I just had one glass of wine and I'm
I'm
good. Like,
fine.
I am fine. There is no problem. I didn't want another one. Like, everything's great. Um, and then it
Oh, how
wasn't
we are
great.
self-deceived.
And then it was, I mean, it was immediate, the compulsion, the wanting to drink the next night, the wanting another one, the needing, and the looping of
Oof.
obsessive thoughts about it. And I
Mhm.
white knuckled it, I think, for like 10 days. And then I was out. That was it,
Just
kind of.
kidding. Take me
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was,
I think that's an
that was,
important experience to go through though, don't you?
yeah, I do. It's very rare that you find people that are sober that haven't had where they've multiple blips, right? But like,
Yeah.
I think I'm a person who's always had to prove it to myself. And
Yeah.
that was, I think, where I prove to myself that, this is more than just, I can't control my drinking. And that's also when I started recognizing that it is a disease, because
Yeah.
the way that I had 4 ounces of wine, and it was obsessive from the second I drank it. Like, I was focusing on alcohol, if I should have alcohol, if I should not have alcohol. I
Oof.
can't drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. And it was like so strong and powerful, the way that my mind was like battling itself. Um, that I definitely think it was an experience that a lot of people need to have, just to push them, nudge them a little into the acceptance phase of, you know what, I'm not like normal people. I really am not, because
Yeah, it's like
normal
an
people don't
allergy.
think this way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's like, well, that's an important, we all have to sort of come to that conclusion ourselves. I had so many experiences where I was like, what was that all like? You wake up the next morning, you're like, what was that all about? Why was
Yeah,
I so,
well,
oh my God. I keep talking about how like I had two alter egos when I was drinking. Like I never knew who was going to come out once I started drinking. It was either badass Betsy or wimpy Wendy because I was either fighting or crying. So,
well,
never mind
yeah,
Jekyll
but
and
that's
Hyde.
perfect though.
Yeah, crazy bitch. That's what that was.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was equally as crazy. I'm guaranteed.
Yeah, so fun.
I was real
Uh,
ball of fun to be around.
yeah, good times. So glad that's behind us now. So
Yes.
you go back to the women's meetings. Did you do the whole thing, the sponsor, and work all the steps, and then be
Yeah,
of service to
I had a
others?
sponsor and I worked them. I got to the third step and kind of struggled more so with getting ready to do my fourth step and then admitting the character defects part of it. But like I was not all in it because I kept sort of dipping my toe back out in like having a drink and then coming back. I mean, I was always honest with her, like, look, I went out and this and that. And so, she had gotten to a point where it was like, look, when you want this, like, I'm here. I can't work this for you. I'm
Right.
not your therapist. I'm not, like, I'm
Mm-mm.
here for you if you want to go to meetings. But you're not doing what you need to be doing for you and your sobriety. And so that was, but I, was so mad. I'm like, whatever, like this lady's nuts.
She
And
just did the middle fingers for those that are
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, flicking off the camera.
podcast. Yeah. It's
So
okay.
I
I'll
really
publish
was
the
like,
video.
F you, like, who do you
Yeah.
think you are? And I went back out and then my ex-husband had resurfaced for a minute. So it was just this, um, I'll call it an explosion of the
Um,
final hurrah of we're never getting together because this is never going to work.
mhm.
And also drinking so much in such a small amount of time, like that I was actually scared with the amount I was drinking, like what was
Wow.
happening. Like I would, if I couldn't get vodka, I was drinking like these like boxes of wine, these Boda boxes.
Yeah.
And like I would drink this red wine and chug it and like barf immediately because it was red wine and I was chugging it. And
Mhm.
then pour it more in a cup to like make it stay down. And
Right.
I just was like terrified of, I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. And I
Oh,
didn't want to
yeah.
live the way that I was living. And I was in this major, I guess, the internal battle of all battles of, am I ready to get better? Do I want to get better? Because then I don't have all my stuff to lean on anymore. Um, and then my last drink was a 3-day situation with a drinking buddy of mine and ended up with my mom coming over and 911 being called. And I was, taken to the hospital with like a 0.398 blood
Oof.
alcohol level. And I woke up and had like a sitter is what they call them here, like because I had been talking about ending my life and
Oh.
not remembered it. And so I was like strapped to the bed in the ER, and it was an eye opening look into my future. Basically, if I didn't stop drinking, and I'm lucky that my mom, when I said contact my sponsor, had an interaction with her and like knew what her name was and was in my phone and like
Mm.
was able to contact her. And I mean, I'm grateful every day. She's my sponsor to this day, by the way, but she
Oh,
came to the
wow.
hospital and brought her big book and said, she walked right in and looked at me and said, are you willing to do whatever it takes to get sober? And I was finally defeated and said, yeah, I am. And so she sat down next to me and held my hand and said, then we're gonna get sober. And so we started the book over again.
Oh, that's beautiful. Makes me want to cry. I mean, just like that hopelessness. I'm like, are you ready? Are you ready to do whatever it takes? Yeah. And that's really the
Which
place we need to be.
it takes a lot. I mean, you've got to I feel like I call it the gift of desperation today.
Hmm.
Of course, didn't think so much of that then, but I was desperate to um not die. I mean, the doctors were very, very open with me about my liver enzyme levels. And like, if you are only 31 years old, 32 years old, like if you keep drinking, you're going to die in like a year and a half. Like your quality of life, you're going to get cirrhosis, you're going to, all of these things are going to happen. And um, I'm lucky that I was traumatized by a childhood, my sister being sick in hospitals and doctors, that I'm like a hypochondriac. Like I get so anxious in any medical situation. So that was another driving factor that I call it's a gift today, because I was so petrified of having to go back through that and have to deal with, IVs and being sick. And I was terrified. I mean, was scared of death.
Hmm.
So I'm, I always say like the hypochondriac in me kind of kept me sober for at least 6 months right there at the beginning, because I wanted my
Keep
liver
me out of the
enzymes to get
hospital.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep me out of that place. Nothing good happens there. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to transition a little bit to some solutions because you've been able to maintain your sobriety for, let's say, 10 years.
Mhm.
And you've had to process, like you've been through the steps, which are amazing. I do them all the time. I go through the steps, and I had a sponsor that was like, we continue to go through the steps because as we address the steps, we change. I heard in the beginning, did you hear this too? Like, if you work the steps will work you.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
one of the first. Yeah.
I love that. I like, because it's true. You take it's and it because during the process it invokes this law of cause and effect, right? You take
Yeah.
action, you get a result. It's nothing personal. You don't have to be smart or a good person or anything. You just do the thing, and you get the result. But I have found that it doesn't solve all the problems. Like I needed to go to therapy, and it sounds like therapy is part of your story too. So, how did we were going to talk about boundaries a little bit because I think that is that's like so primary in having healthy relationships as we get older, because relationships can be such an area of like pain or struggle or whatever. Tell me a little bit about how you think of boundaries and how to have better boundaries.
Sure. Well, I first learned about boundaries honestly when I got sober, because I finally had to put up a boundary that I was not going to go places where people were drinking, or restaurants even that had a bar in it, because um I knew I couldn't not feel tempted, right? So I tried to pull myself out of places that were going to be a temptation to me. And that was my first experience with like, oh, well, when I do this, like people aren't mad at me for not going, one. And two, they're supporting me more almost because I'm standing my ground. And, I feel proud of myself because I didn't go and I was able to get another day of sobriety. So that was honestly when I was like, oh, that's what a boundary feels like. You can enforce them for yourself because they are for yourself. I was thinking they were about other people and other
Right.
places, and it actually was not. They're about me and what I need to do for me. And, I call them like a loving little fence. Without boundaries around you, you are resentful, which anybody in recovery knows is like the kiss of death, because you
Oh
just
yeah.
sit pruny and bitter, in the resentment. And it's really interesting when you look at like starting, I always call it baby stepping, like from What About Bob, baby stepping to the bus. So it was like my
Yeah.
first boundaries were like baby stepping, I'm not drinking. Baby
Mhm.
step, then I add another baby step. I'm not going to go to bars with my friends. Another baby step, I'm not coming over if you guys are drinking. Um, and then also on the other end of that boundary, recognizing that I was not losing my friendships because of it, because I was just standing up for myself and respecting myself enough to know that I can't handle that, you know? And as my sobriety has evolved, boundaries have allowed me to take responsibility for a lot of things that I
Mm.
didn't want to take responsibility for, you know?
Mhm.
Um, I think that I wanted to blame everyone else for everything happening to me. And when you start enforcing boundaries, and I say enforce because anybody can put a boundary down and say, I'm no longer gonna go to the restaurant with a bar in it. But if you don't follow through with it, you're really not setting a boundary. You
Right.
know, there
Yeah.
has to be a consequence and, an enforcement happening within yourself. Like, I'm not going to do that, and upholding it.
Yeah.
Um, but once I was able to really enforce them and stick to them, I started to notice that my relationships were improving instead of deteriorating. I felt less anxious about having to do things, and saying no was very hard for me. I mean, I'm also a good little codependent, got that going for me too. So um, I saying no was one of the hardest things I ever had to learn to do. And it all started with saying no to drinking. And once I was able to sort of realize that those were boundaries, I was able to start putting them with people in relationships, and seeing that everything's getting so much better because and here's a wild thought, I'm respecting myself. I'm having respect for myself.
Yeah.
And
Big. That's
this
a
is
big
what
deal.
it, I mean, this is what it feels like, right? To respect myself. Um, because quite frankly, I didn't respect myself ever until I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I drank and I did dumb things, and would shame myself and tell myself how awful I was. And it didn't help that I had a partner. My first marriage was a partner that saw those things and used them against me as a weapon. So, anybody that's looking to begin boundaries, it starts with saying no. And
Right.
that's the very first step, and
You,
it's a small one.
well, you said something really interesting to me because when I first started contemplating the idea of boundaries, I would think of how I was going to set boundaries with others. Like, I'm going to teach you how to treat me like this is not okay. You know what I mean? It's like that's how I first was introduced to the idea of boundaries. But what you were talking about were self boundaries, right? I almost, yeah, I don't know. Self boundaries are a thing for me. Like, I have a workaholism tendency, or a little
No, you don't
overachiever.
say.
Yeah. Water stays at some level. We're going to be friends. But I had to put, even to this day, it's like self boundaries are still really important for me to be like, I don't have people in my life who cross my boundaries, but I betray myself all the time. I betray myself all the time. And it's, interviewed Dr. Anna Lemke, and she was talking about pro-social shame, which is a concept I wasn't really familiar with. And she used it in terms of, the 12-step program, where people lead by example. Right. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I was like, oh, I thought that was so interesting because that is a form of boundaries, right? We hang out with people that are, sort of on the same path and kind of get it, but what is very easy to hide is how I abuse myself by making myself work too hard or too long, or the
Yeah.
self-sacrificing, you know,
I'll self-sacrifice all day long. I mean,
yeah, that's a
I,
self-boundary.
I've educated myself a lot on these, and I work daily. I mean, I'm no different than anybody else. Just because I have some education and certificates and history of helping other people, doesn't mean I'm 100% awesome with myself. Like
We are not saints. That line always cracks me up in the meetings when they say, "Oh, we are not saints." It's like,
yeah.
really, bitch, and like nobody's confused about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the thing it's like everybody struggles with it because
Yeah.
I would rather sabotage myself. I'll throw myself under the bus all day, every day. Like,
Yeah,
oh, for me, it's not hard to be, I'm my own worst enemy.
for
The
sure.
the person that I'm up against all the time is me. It's never another human being. I'm
Right.
competing with myself, who I
Yeah.
want to be, who I was, who I am today. And it is in finding self-regulatory boundaries that I was able to
Mhm.
maintain sobriety, because I'll fight myself all the way to the bottom of a vodka Smirnoff bottle. Ugh, it's so gross. Like,
Eh,
but I will burn my throat out just to prove to myself how I'm weak and I'm not
Not
able or
worthy, not
capable.
deserving. Yeah. Reinforcing those negative biases.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But through being able to say no, I motivated myself into a whole new kind of stratosphere. And when I work with, sponsees or even clients, if you get that little bit of confidence, you say no one day and you make it through the 24 hours, and it's like that confidence feels so good to have. Wow, I did it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it motivates the next 24 hours. And when you make it through those next 24 hours, it's a bigger, like, oh, shit, I'm getting good. I got 2 days of this,
Yeah.
and I will be honest, the only boundary in the last decade that I have not had conflicted issues with is my boundary of I'm not drinking. So
Yeah.
that is the one,
Same.
step one, like I'm an alcoholic, like I get it every day. That is the one I will not break. At least knocking on wood today.
Right.
For today, I'm not breaking it, and I've had a pretty decent streak of not breaking it. I think for me it helps. My husband's in recovery.
Oh, nice.
So it definitely helps me to
That does
have,
help.
someone who not just supports me, but understands the way that my crazy mind can be, and have patience and grace with me for the things that I'm not perfect for. Because as women today in 2021, we have so much pressure,
Mm.
from society, from social media, from other parents, if you're a parent, from other coworkers, if you're, if you work in the corporate world, from, other friends and neighbors that you got to keep up with because they just got an Escalade, and now I've got to get an Escalade, and I've got to work harder to get the Escalade. And um, there's so much pressure. And then it's even worse because we put the pressure on ourselves.
Mhm.
And then it's, I'm not skinny enough. I'm not pretty enough. Why can't I go 20 hours like my neighbor who's hopped up on Adderall? And, why am I not able to run all day and only sleep for 3 hours and
Right.
get all the PTA and the stuff done? But
The comparison thing that you're talking
it's
about is
comparison.
brutal.
And then it goes back to what you said in the beginning, the courage to ask for help, because
Yeah.
we seem to think that we can do everything on our own. And we as women on a whole are notorious for thinking, I don't need help. I can do this.
I can
I
do
can
this.
do this. If I just reallocate, move, shift things, shift priorities, say no to myself, put these people above here and move. It's like, because you can't see me on the podcast, like I'm shuffling my little boards around on
Schedule.
my
Yeah.
calendar, and at the end of the day, I'm still burnt out. I'm still overwhelmed. I'm still exhausted. And why? Because I am incapable of saying I am fucking drowning. I'm drowning.
Yeah. I'm burnt out. I'm
And
tired. And yeah, that's really
that
important.
happens in sobriety. It happens to people who
Yeah.
are therapists. It happens to women who are like,
Everybody. Everybody.
Oprah
Yeah.
Winfrey herself feels that on some level.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's so important. And that we, you speak to that we need each other to, get through, and I had shared with you that my mother passed away. And one of the biggest gifts of, the end of her life was just being a witness to her goodbyes. And the reoccurring conversation was around, I'm so grateful for the time that we shared together, the laughter, like just the conversations, that you were there for me when I was struggling. Thank you for all the laughs. And that was all that mattered. No, not once did they talk about their cars or their money or their, you know what I'm saying? It was
Yeah. Oh yeah.
just such a beautiful experience to get to witness that we really do need each other. And that's all that matters in the end, is that
Yeah.
we're
And
together.
would, I think coming out of this pandemic, and I shared that I went to this Miraval Wellness Resort because I needed to untangle myself from my family and my home and
Mm,
get to a place where there was digital mindfulness. So I didn't have a phone or like I was unavailable to anybody but me. And the overwhelming the one experience I had during this equine therapy was that I have been drowning for so long because of this pandemic, and I didn't even realize it. I help other
yeah,
people for my job. I've kept
yeah,
my kids afloat. I've kept my husband afloat. I've been there for my parents. I've done all the things except for take care of myself.
right.
And I wasn't taking care of myself because I wasn't recognizing that I was so overwhelmed from all of the unusual, because let's face it, God, I hope we never have to go through anything like that
Right.
again
Yeah.
in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, and, I think that the mental health impact is not even started to open
Oh
up.
no.
I think it's just a little scrape where people are recognizing
Mhm.
um, the impact that it's had. But I get very tired of being everything for everybody else. But the codependent in me thrives on it. God, it feels so good to help, to be the one that like helps in the saving. And when my kids need me, it feels so good to
Oh
say,
yeah.
here's your lunch, or here's, like, here's this, and I left this and I'm dropping it at the school. But like, even though that feels good, it isn't good for me.
It comes
And
at a
it
price if it's out of balance, for sure.
exactly. So
Yeah.
um I think making sure that I reevaluated my boundaries and saying like, wow, God, I really, because my kids didn't have school for a year and a half at school basically, and we couldn't do summer camps. Like I have just been in this bubble of all the time. And I'm like, there's a reason you can't be with your family this much. Like it's
Yeah.
like,
It's not healthy
even
for
though I
anybody.
adore my family, I
I
love
know.
my husband, I
I
love
know.
my children are like my world, but like enough. There's a reason I
Yeah.
need 8 hours a day with you in a building learning and me being able to work and
Yes, ma'am.
do me, because even in a normal situation, I can lose myself in my identity and have these moments of, God, where am I? I don't even recognize myself anymore.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's even harder when you're with the COVID stuff, and I've been dealing with my clients, I'm sure you have too, just people
Hmm.
feeling like I have no idea what I want to
Yeah.
do. I have no idea why I'm so anxious. Like nobody's even
Everyone's
pinpointing
so
it
out
to
of
the
touch.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all out of touch. It's that boiling frog syndrome. And I don't even know I don't know if it's a metaphor, what do you want to call it? But like, have you heard that idea that if you put a frog in a pot of water when it's, the water's cold, and turn up the heat slowly, the frog doesn't even know to jump out. It doesn't notice that it's being boiled. It's very
Yeah.
gruesome.
But it's true,
But that's
because it
how
took me
yeah,
pulling myself out of it to say like, oh my God, I
like,
like,
what have I been doing to myself?
yeah, I got
Yeah.
on an airplane and felt more free and had more energy than I had in
A year
a
and a half.
year, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was
That's
like
really good.
instant.
Yeah. No, this is really good. Thank you for talking about I wrote down self-regulatory boundaries. That's really important. And you mentioned that you work with clients. If people are looking for a coach or would like to connect with you to talk about help people, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Honestly, Instagram, just DM me, and they can go to my website too, but Instagram is where I spend most of my time. So it's at Brooke Collins Coaching.
Well, listen, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you and get to know you. We'll talk later about setting up a Joe Dispenza retreat.
Oh
Or
yeah, for sure.
I think I was trying to talk you into going to the She Recovers event in April too.
Yes. And
Put that on your to-do list of things to
yep,
consider.
it was on because it looks like it's going to be so much fun.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be great. I went a couple years ago to the Beverly Hills one, and it was really amazing. It was an amazing experience. And I think in at this phase of my life, I'm looking for enriching experiences rather than things,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I need
Even
some.
with Christmas presents, I actually, it's funny you said that. So I know we're wrapping things up, but like I asked my husband, like, do you want me to get you like a gift this year, or should we do an experience? Like, should we go on a little like 5-day jaunt by
Yeah,
ourselves, like
yeah,
as an
by
experience?
ourselves. Yeah,
He
girl,
was
go have an
like,
experience.
experience, hands down experience. And I'm like,
He's like,
okay.
I don't need another thing. I need, well, I don't want to
Oh,
talk
I
about what
don't
he
need.
might need.
Yeah.
So fun. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for your time today. I'm looking forward for people to getting to know you better and reaching out to you. So thanks so much for all that you shared today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on your show. I'm glad to have met you for sure.